Hello, my name is Pedro Andres Muñoz, better known as Peter. I was born September 30th, 1995 in Tucson, which means Village of the Dark Spring of the Foot of the Mountains, or as we know it today, Tucson. I am an American of Mexican descent, or Mexican American. Linking Hispanic heritage through archaeology has enriched my knowledge of history and the links of my heritage. From visiting Los Santos Angeles in Guavari to viewing seashells from the Pacific Ocean in Casa Grande. Visiting Montezuma's castle to learning about the plants in our own backyard, as well as being introduced to Native American pottery to the weapons the Spaniards used. How did I get here? My bloodline has many interesting places of birth. I have family members that were born in Spain, Mexico, and the United States. During our visit to the Arizona State Museum and the Presidio, we saw many artifacts that belonged to the Spaniards, which settled in Tucson in 1775. Tucson, however, became part of Mexico in 1821 when Mexico won their independence from Spain. Needless to say, 1853, Tucson became part of the United States after the Gadsden Purchase. My great-great-grandmother, Josefine Acereto Ferris, was of Spanish descent. Her mother was born in Madrid, Spain, as well as her uncle. They moved to Yucatan when they were very young. My great-great-great-uncle, Joaquin Muris Azareto, although of Spanish descent, he served in Mexico's military during the Mexican Revolution. His picture can be found in the museum in Yucatan and the Department of Armed Service in Mexico City. While viewing the artifacts in the museum, I came across a violin. This violin was located in the Arizona State Museum. It reminded me of my great-grandfather, Juan Andres Maldonado, born in Jalisco, Mexico in 1922. He was an entertainer as one of the original mariachi violinists of Mariachi Vargas. He traveled the United States with famous singers like Pedro Infante, Lola Beltran, and Javier Solis. Both he and my grandmother settled down in Guadalajara, Solis, after the untimely death of Pedro Infante. I would often imagine what I would feel if I had the opportunity to visit sites with ruins, and I did such that this summer. We visited Montezuma's Castle, Casa Grande, Ovari, and of course, San Javier. I've always wondered what it would be like to visit the pyramid in Mexico. And although my maternal grandmother's background is not part of entertainers or has any pictures in the museum as my paternal grandfather, but I am so rich in culture. I am proud of being of Spanish descent, and I am just as proud to say I have immediate family of Aztec descent. I have always wondered if I was part of an amazing civilization. It turns out my grandmother is the first generation that did not speak Nahuatl. That is right. My great-grandmother's primary language was Nahuatl. Spanish was her second language. Nahuatl is the language of the Aztec. Great-grandmother Maria de Jesus was born in Zacualo de Torres, Mexico in 1916. She was taught not to use her native tongue out in the city, but only at her own home. So she had to learn to speak Spanish. My mother remembers lots of clay potteries, grinders, molcajetes, and the use of many natural plants and flowers she used for eating and also healing. One of the family's favorite foods to eat even to this day is the prickly pears, nopaletos, which with chile and shrimp patties during Lent. We also drink hibiscus tea or tuna juice. And no, not the fish tuna, but the prickly pear fruit known as tuna. While at San Javier, I recall what my grandmother told me about her father and what he lived through when he was 12 years old. As I heard of how Father Kino built San Javier, I wonder what he would said about what happened years later during Los Cruceros. During 1922, the Catholic Church and the Mexican government were at war, and any and all that were for the Catholic Church was to be assassinated, hung, or executed. It was difficult to obtain information of my father's descent. Not much is known about my grandparents. My abuelita Angeline was born in Culiacán, Sinaloa, and my abuelito Pedro was born in León, Guanajuato. My abuelita had very curly hair, and my abuelito had very slanted eyes. One could say they looked of Asian descent. While in the lecture at Casa Grande, I was surprised to hear of the seashells and how they had ended up here from the Pacific. We were informed of how the early people could have possibly used the seashells they found as a trading system. I've often wondered where I get my curly hair and my very slightly slanted eyes. This is only the first step into figuring out about my background, not to mention the background that I am yet to learn about. I can say that I'm getting closer to answering the questions that I've been asking. I hope that once I finally find the missing puzzle piece of my heritage, and I can finally say I know who I am.